Hello, Cardstack community. This is Chris C., the founding director of the Cardstack project, coming to you from the land of the Web3. So last week we talked a little bit overview about the Cardstack protocol on payments called CardPay. This week I want to walk you through a paper we have prepared to go a little bit more in details about why we created the CardPay protocol, who are the type of people that will use it and play a role within the protocol, the role of the tokens to help govern and incentivize the activity on this layer 2 payment protocol, as well as thinking about how that relates to the overall launch plans of the other product in Cardstack universe, such as CardSpace, which allows you to host your own dApp and leveraging the same payment infrastructure to do more than just one type of payment, leveraging one common fiat on-ramp and other type of token on-ramp, so we can build a real economy where people and customer pay real goods for real service with merchant getting paid, and then creating a velocity of business and money that keeps the economy going. So what I'm going to walk you through is a paper we have developed. It's not super long, I think about 16 pages, and it has some of the screenshots you've seen in previous weeks, and I will just kind of go through that with you. So let me get over here in the corner, and then we'll walk through this paper. So this is a CardPay protocol. So it is related to the Cardstack ecosystem. Obviously, the Cardstack ecosystem is about building a software ecosystem that would compete with the software as a service offering, the SaaS offerings from Silicon Valley. But to do that, to build a new software economy, we have to figure out a better way to pay for software. And that means fast, easy, and cheap transactions. And if those transactions are done on-chain, what we get is the ability to use these DeFi constructs, such as pooling money into a smart contract, so that we can distribute that money or that value to the different participant. And if we do not do it through these kind of smart contract pools, what we call the reserve pool and revenue pool, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, exactly what they are, it will be very difficult to make sure that a royalty get paid to a creator. It will be difficult to make sure that someone gets a commission for bringing customer to a new channel. But if we pull the money together and have a payment protocol that has this idea of both individual control but also group kind of a dispersion. So card protocol is customer acceptance, CA, and revenue distribution, RD. Combining CA and RD, you get the acronym CARD. And that's what we are really doing here. Now, obviously, CardPay is a decentralized finance protocol. So most of the decentralized finance protocol has been focusing on yield farming, creating some sort of a return on loans and kind of instruments that people who have capital make their at-rest capital available for other people to use. And then people who need those capital, whether it's flash loan or other type more long-term characteristic, will get a yield on it. What we are focusing on with the CardPay protocol is something called spend farming. And that seems like a new term, but it's actually just saying that if I go and spend money on this credit card, I get loyalty points, I get credit card points. Well, then you're farming the loyalty point, whether it's American Express membership reward or your airline miles, by spending money on that card. Sometimes you get 1x reward, sometimes you get 5x reward for a certain category. And that's very, very common. So this idea of payment and rewards, as we mentioned, is really symbiosis. The payment drives the rewards. And so what we see is that this kind of basic mechanism that we can use to support the software marketplace can also support any other output, including those in the economy. We see it as really a gameplay, right? So participant exchanging both fungible, like money and points, and non-fungible asset, such as getting a voucher or badges for something like that. And I think this idea of gameplay between merchants and customers are not just something that's going to replace what's going on in the fiat world, but they're much more fun to do. We can do it in a way where the rules are clear, everybody gets to go in and come out at their own schedule and using tools that are in their control, especially a mobile wallet. And that type of gameplay loop, if properly integrated with social media and the kind of crypto mechanism, I think is going to be not only really fun, but it will actually give traditional finance and credit card processing network a run for their money. So one of the things that made us work on this problem of CardPay is that a lot of the promise of blockchain is around payment, And then payment kind of went away. It became something that Bitcoin isn't worked on. I think people don't really want to go and buy Bitcoin pizza anymore. It's expensive in fees, and you regret it buying a 1 BTC or 200 BTC pizza 10 years later. So I think there's been a little bit of a missing solution on payments as people focus on things like DeFi, where the dollar amount, $1,000 pool liquidity pool on Uniswap is considered relatively small, and so but $1,000 payment to buy something is considered relatively expensive. So the block space on layer 1 on the Ethereum mainnet is something that is actually quite difficult to justify if it's day-to-day payment. However, because DeFi projects are ranked by total value locked, even though the payment use case we haven't caught on because of this high fee, it is still something that is a huge opportunity for protocol to come in and say, hey, look at what people in centralized payment like Venmo, Cash App, Apple Pay, WeChat Pay. There's a lot of activity about using digital applications or mobile application as a payment mechanism, replacing plastic or cash, whatever it might be. They've really just blown up and really becomes a part of what we talk about every day. To a degree, we don't really get excited over mobile payment anymore. But imagine if we can bring this idea of crypto payment to tap into DeFi, to tap into the not only liquidity, but also the new user experiences about what you can do when you have programmable money, which is really what decentralized finance is about. So if we can bring that capability together, then we can build a new payment network. And I really believe that we have the necessary pieces to do that right now. Just nobody has really reopened the both opportunity space, but also the Pandora box of what does it take to make payment happen. So I believe that Cardstack has, through our focus on end user experience and mass market adoption, stumbled on both on a opportunity, but also a stumbling block, which is how do we get to use the tools that we've invented within the Ethereum and DeFi and Web3 space to apply to this problem that we may have forgotten, but is still as important as ever before. So, CardPay is really about making crypto payments practical. We may have written it off, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. So, what does it mean to make it practical? We believe it's really 3 characteristics. It must be fast, it must be cheap, it must be easy. Right? So fast means that if I press a button and I load the balance and I can get my coffee. I don't have to futz around creating 24 worth passphrases or trying to get the exchange to deposit money or some redemption loop. It should be as easy to use as Apple Pay. It must be cheap. So if you're gonna buy $10 or $3 worth of goods on chain or online, you can't pay $20 gas fee or $80 if it's a complex smart contract operation in a busy part of the day. So it has to be something that is not only cheaper from a gas fee, but here's one of the big problem on Ethereum, which is that ERC20, which is a great standard that allows for stablecoins and different types of token to interoperate, has this need to do 2 transactions on chain, one to unlock it, one to send it. It's like having to swipe your credit card 2 times to buy something. So we need to move to a standard, and we think that the ERC 677 is a great standard to use for that. And then for easy, and there's really no other way to say, if you want to make it easy, you have to look at the entire customer workflow. And it basically begins and ends with replacing MetaMask and these kind of Chrome plugins with Wallet Connect or with this mobile workflow. I think to get mass market adoption, to get someone to install a Chrome plugin, it's going to be much harder to do than to say, hey, this is a new mobile app and this is a markup and something that is already implemented in our React Native code base of what a prepaid card would look like so that you can spend this balance, which is about $145 in value from your wallet. You can pay merchants, you can reload it, and while you use it, you can earn rewards. Notice we didn't talk anything about blockchain, talk about ETH addresses. We do express the ETH address as a type of account number, which I think people would get. But the idea here is that this app that we're building, the Cardstack mobile application with the CardPay features, has more in common with these kind of consumer digital cash payment protocol than any type of investment-focused DeFi wallet. So what are the building blocks? So to build something like CardPay, we needed to not only have blockchains, we also need a bunch of new technique and technology that have come onto the space in the last, I would say, year and a half. It really grew up in the last year and a half where we actually thought it was possible for us to build a very, very good comparable to centralized kind of, traditional finance or fintech payment mechanism. One is layer 2, which is that we need to have cheaper payment based on-chain transaction being much less expensive Ethereum net. And XDAI chain, which is the one we've chosen as the first network to support card pay on, is popular. It runs Ethereum smart contracts in Solidity. This is really great. And so we use that. But we are having conversations with many other networks who are having other approaches, different types of consensus and security model, and we intend to support all of them. Stablecoins, and I think DAI being the most famous stablecoin, one of the first really trustless as much as possible. We want to be able to have people denominate the transaction in US dollars. It's much easier to tell people how much something is relative to other if you can price it in USD. So I think it makes sense to bring the USD type of payment and obviously conversion in the UI to your preferred payment, whether it's Euro or Sing Dollar or even ETH, if you really have a good understanding of how much that costs. If you're an NFT trader, you probably know that very well. But the idea here is that we want to use stablecoin as the backing store, and I think that's just going to make it a lot easier for people to understand. Smart contract wallet. So the way to actually automate or make it easier for people to load up the balance, they actually think about the wallet as something that is in itself programmable. Instead of relying people to fund the wallet with some gas or something like that, we just give you almost a pre-created wallet, like someone who spent a lot of time working on a wallet, making sure you have the right things in it, and just handing you the wallet and say, here's a wallet you can use. Well, we can do that by making all of the work necessary and all the orchestration wrapped in the wallet, and then basically transfer the ownership of the wallet physically digitally to another person and say, hey, here's a ready-made wallet that you can use right away. That's what we call prepaid card. So every prepaid card in our ecosystem is essentially a smart contract wallet, and specifically Gnosis Save. So Gnosis Save is a multi-sig wallet, smart contract wallet that's deployed on chain, a lot of times used to manage really large treasury, like millions, if not tens of millions of dollars with multiple signatory to get the funds out. But the basic idea and basic operating principle of Gnosis Save is so good that we think that not only is it secure, is it well integrated with other things and well tested as a wallet to do day-to-day transaction. We really believe that we're just really lucky to be able to tap into that incredible good thinking that the Gnosis team has spent on building Gnosis Save and use that as a foundation to build out this kind of more consumer-facing capability. But underneath CardStack and Card Pay and the prepaid card mechanism and the reward card mechanism is a Gnosis Save multi-sig wallet. And as we mentioned last week, we also want to support a payment on things that are not fungible. So if I want to redeem a voucher to give admission for 1 month or one visit or something like that, that doesn't need to be a ERC20 token. It cannot, what does it mean to have 0.9% of a voucher? So you want to have redemption using NFT, non-fungible token. You can also have redemption where you have to show that you are one of my patrons who bought one of my digital artwork, and that can also be done in our protocol. So NFT is certainly something that we consider as an important way of composability for payments. And then staking. Anytime you want to create a economic bandwidth on a network, you got to deposit that some other value in another pool. So for us to be able to say, hey, here's a prepaid card that's worth $100, we got to have $100 backing it somewhere else. And since we use stablecoin and reward tokens as a backing value, we need to lock that. And if someone locks that in a, let's say, layer 1 smart contract to back the value of this prepaid card, they should receive a percentage of some protocol fees. So instead of paying Visa 2.9% of a transaction, you may pay 0.5% of a transaction to the network, and the network distribute that based on, who put the liquidity for this particular stable coin in layer 1 as the total value locked of the card protocol, and therefore they can get a fee. Notice this is quite similar to liquidity provider putting tokens into Uniswap and getting a percentage, proportional share of the fees or the trading fees that goes in. It's just the payment version of that mechanism. Now, this does not preclude other type of incentives. So let's say you want to provide a certain type of stablecoin and you want people to use that stablecoin, you can give customer additional reward and points if they spend that stablecoin and spend mining. But that's in addition to the staking of this economic bandwidth and value in layer 1. And finally, we got to build a really great mobile experience. So we're going to use the Wallet Connect standard, which has been battle tested by the great teams that have both created it and also refined it. And we're leveraging that particular ecosystem to build out a replacement for the need for having a Chrome plugin in the case of MetaMask. Now, I know MetaMask does support Wallet Connect, and I think that's a great way to grow together. But our mobile wallet is specifically focused on the payment use case because it's a little bit different than looking at charts, right? And or doing swaps and stuff like that. You may do swaps as a way that I have this token or I have this stable coin in euro or something like that and want to buy this USD price thing. It would still do Uniswap inside, but it's wrapped within the language, workflow, and orientation of a payment application. So this is the diagram about roughly how the card protocol works. So the customer spends the prepaid balance or reward tokens or vouchers that they have in their smart contract wallet. Merchants earn them, right? And then they have another smart contract wallet that's like the merchant account, and then they can redeem it and withdraw it. But they can also offer, as a merchant, kind of status and vouchers and reward tokens, such as I bought a coffee, here's a loyalty points that you earn because you bought lunch from me, and then the customer can redeem it. So in the customer wallet, it's not only balances that they have purchased or loaded, like fiat balance they can use for stablecoin transaction, but also any type of loyalty point or badges that the merchants or one of merchants give them. So that's the loop: spend, earn, offer, redeem, spend, earn, offer, redeem, and that virtuous cycle never ends. The one mention here is that we distinguish between the card protocol, which is mostly the on-chain component that keeps track of these movement of value across the network, but there's also an off-chain protocol called Tally. Is kind of a computational oracle. So it's something that will look at the history of transactions that the customer has made and then distribute reward. So the reward distribution doesn't need to be done on-chain. Sometimes it's pretty expensive to look at all the transactions that everybody has done. It could be millions of thousands of millions. We can use an off-chain process to do this. So Chainlink is an oracle that averages different exchange rates into one possible value that is reliable, that people can depend on. We're doing something similar, except we're actually aggregating a number, dividing it, or looking at some rules on chain, and then deciding, hey, based on your spending activity in the last month, you get 65 reward token, and that would be Tally signing that transaction so that you can redeem that token from the merchant and from what we call a reward pool, a pool where the vouchers and tokens and loyalty points are readily distributed. So from a customer and merchant workflow point of view, this chart is not super helpful. So what do I do as a customer? So when a customer first come to CardPay, they go to a web page. We're going to use a dApp to do that. And that can be hosted separately from the Cardstack ecosystem, or you can use our CardSpace as a dApp creation and hosting tool to go and create this product page. And that page can be selling NFTs, physical merchandises, or subscription. And then once you go as a customer, go to the page, you click the buy button. Instead of doing Apple Pay or something like that, you scan a QR code using Wallet Connect. And then if you haven't downloaded the app yet, the Cardstack app, you can download that. And then once you connect it, it's as if you have connected your wallet to a dApp or to a particular protocol. And then this is in lieu of any Facebook login or email addresses. Now you have a direct relationship where you can have economic value. The second step is that you get customer pricing, customized pricing. So what's nice thing about these kind of new type of token-gated community is that when you connect to the wallet, you can see as a dApp how many tokens that a particular customer have. If they have more than one token, then you let them in. Well, we can do the same thing. If you have my reward token, then I can say, hey, here's a discount. Or you have my art, you get my NFT, I can give you a free trial of my new podcast. But if you don't have any of that, they can say, okay, you have some USD stable coin, let's pay in that. So what the user, what the customer sees depends on what they have in the wallet. So you want to accumulate a nice, rich array of different types of tokens and fungible and non-fungible so you can get the best deal. But once you decide how you're going to play, you're going to use Touch ID to actually sign an on-chain transaction, and that's how you pay the merchant. So it's a really nice way of combination of these kind of coupon and deal sourcing and finding type of workflow combined with this really straightforward payment workflow. And once you complete a transaction, you immediately know that you have broadcasted the fact that you bought this either NFT or the subscription, and other people and other providers can say, hey, I want to give you these competitive offers. Try my NFT or try my subscription. And then you can claim the reward. So if you look at a slightly broader version of this thing, the Tally protocol is the bridge between the spending and earning and then the offer redemption. So this idea of the combination that the reserve pool, which is the mechanism we use to lock value or total value lock in a DeFi sense, the CARD protocol locks the value of not only stablecoin reserve, which is what allows us to fund these USD-based transactions and allow anybody, a merchant who has earned, let's say, $5, $10, $15, $100, when they're done, at the end of the day or week or the month, they can withdraw from layer 1 following the bridge, and then they will have USDC or DAI in their layer 1 wallet, and then they've kind of earned that. But while they're earning this that revenue, that is all on layer 2 a very low fee, and they get basically, other than the fees paid to the network, almost 100% of the customer payment. So. But the same thing is also true about reward token. And this is how we will distribute in an airdrop kind of way tokens of the Cardstack network, the Cardstack native token, the CARD token, to users who use our payment system. So we would deposit as a merchant, right, or as a network operator, a set of tokens into the reserve pool, and then based on spending, earlier would be more higher APR or higher point conversion, and later on will be tapered out as more people use this system. So that if you spend money using the CARD Pay application and the network, you will earn CARD token, especially if you're early on. And those CARD token can be redeemed or it can be used for governance and other things. And we'll talk about that in a second. So the next section is talking about the payment scenario, which are what are the types of things you can do once you have this mechanism in place. So obviously, the thing that people do when they install like WeChat app or WeChat Pay, something like that, is to pay with their local currency. It could be USD in Cash App. It could be renminbi if you're using WeChat Pay or whatever. But if you are actually using the Cardstack CARD Pay application, you get to choose what denomination you use. We price everything. At least we recommend our merchant to price everything in USD so that we can convert that into whatever token price it might be if you're using a non-stable coin. But both paying with stable coin and non-stable coins are supported. If you have that particular token and the merchant is priced in a token, that's simple. You pay in that token, right? But if it is not, then you have to swap for it. So what's nice thing about making CARD Pay a ERC20, ERC677 compatible protocol is that we can do these swaps when you pay. So let's say you have some, ETH and the payment is in DAI, you can actually pay in ETH and will just, as part of the protocol, swap using a Uniswap compatible protocol deployed to layer 2 as the liquidity pair to go do the transaction. But generally speaking, you can pay with either of them without really worrying about it. And then the merchant, and this is from the merchant side, they can say, you know what, but I really want people to pay me in my own token. So I'm going to create a discount where any product that you pay using my token, for example, Cardstack Foundation wants people to pay in CARD token for many hosting and other advertising type of use of our token. We're going to create a 50% discount or something like that. So it's much cheaper to buy the token in the open market and then pay with that because it shows loyalty and it shows support for the ecosystem. And any merchant who has their own token or want to cross-honor another merchant or creator's token can set these discounts themselves. And we talk about that, you can earn other token based on spend. The cool thing about this is that you don't have to earn token from that particular merchant you're buying from, like getting credit card point from your credit card is possible, getting airline mile from your airline mile is also possible, but you can also get competitor token, which is a great way for people to discover new networks and new new services when they bring that together. And then you can, some of these rewards are in voucher form, so they're NFT forms, so that when the merchants create a voucher, let's say a free month of usage or something like that, they can have a booklet of them and they can say, next time I'm going to redeem one of these things. Now, you can also sell it. You know, if these are NFT, you can actually sell it on OpenSea. Let's say you got some really exclusive vouchers to redeem one hour of time for now famous digital artists. What that voucher is, you may get for free, maybe worth $10,000 today. So this idea of using voucher as redemption is also something that can have a secondary market because they are NFT and they're ERC 721. Other programs can also offer their own vouchers, and that's allowing us to create a discovery network where the on-chain smart contract combined with the off-chain Tally protocol provides essentially advertising and targeted ad opportunity. Now, there are going to be allow lists and these kind of token created registry to make sure that people do not spam each other. We'll talk about that in a second. Statuses. So if you have enough spending with a merchant, you might get a badge. And this is something you can display as a collectible on your wallet or on your Web3 homepage, where you're like a silver member of this club or silver member of this creator's patron group. That's also issued as ERC 721, and that's issued when you reach a certain threshold, bought at least 10 of my work, bought at least $2,000 worth of my work, or bought it so at least one of my tracks or something like that. And that obviously with any type of status create a opportunity for discount. So like, oh, anybody who has my VIP badge will get a discount that can be set at the rule level. So you don't have to go to each product as a merchant to say, give people 20% discount in all these different products. You can just say blanket offer, anybody who has my silver badge gets 25% discount or 25% bonus, whatever it might be. So those are the kind of scenarios of what you can use this protocol for. These are certainly not the only scenario, but we want to make sure that we study what exists in the open loop banking world, which is the existing payment, credit card, debit card, gift card, loyalty card, airline miles, redemption system, and try to translate the gist, the core principle of that to DeFi, to the building block of blockchain-based, smart contract-based interaction, and make that the first version of what we put out there. And new versions and new capability and new mechanism can be released over time. Participants. So this is something that is a protocol, so that we need people and need individuals and organizations to come and serve one of these roles to make this all work. And obviously we need customers and merchants, but I think that's really straightforward. Let me talk a little bit about supply and issuers, the two roles that are kind of invented as a way to solve some real problems. The problem number one of a supplier is similar to a import-export problem. So let's say you have an island and your island wants to sell some DVD player or something like that. Well, if you were to ship the DVD player every single time from mainland, it's going to require a lot of delay. So every single time, say you walk to the store, say, hey, I want to buy a DVD player. Say, well, I can order from the mainland. It will take 14 days to get here. Well, there's another way to do it. If that store, that retailer, that general store can bridge or like bring an inventory of DVD players into the island, then they give you one right away and they can replenish the supply through the next shipment that they do regularly. So that's what suppliers do. They move token such as stable coins and other volatile token to the layer 2 network in bulk. So instead of trying to bridge $10 because you want to spend $10, which would take you 3 to 5, maybe 30 minutes to do that, someone who's a supplier has already done that work for you. They already brought $10,000, $100,000, $1 million worth of stablecoin value onto layer 2, minted the token, and now they can just give it to you. Now, the great thing about that is that they are staking their hard-earned stablecoin in layer 1, but when they do that, they want to get compensated for staking, so they need to be compensated as well. Issuer is maybe the same person as a supplier, but they're a slightly different person. issuer gives you the token or gives you these kind of prepaid balances in exchange for you paying them back some other way, right? So if I give you a prepaid phone card on this island, you better give me either cash or do a credit card transaction. So there are a couple of issuers. Issuers are responsible for collecting the upfront payment and managing the reload of that prepaid account or the prepaid card. So a fiat on-ramp, so someone who has done credit card integration or debit card integration, a company like Wire or MoonPay or Ramp can say, hey, I want to be a fiat on-ramp issuer. I have bridged some tokens to this network. And then when you pay me through Apple Pay or other debit card transaction, we'll issue you or send you to your wallet, a prepaid wallet, a prepaid card to that. So they use fiat as a consideration for paying, giving you this prepaid balance. An on-chain issuer, which is someone who say, hey, if you send me some ETH on mainnet, I will give you this prepaid balance. They're providing a function, except they're collecting the money, the value, through an on-chain way. Centralized exchanges, or other type of financial service provider can do something similar, except instead of getting paid on chain, they can say, hey, go to the exchange UI or the API and then press this button and then I'll give you this prepaid balance. Either way, as long as this issuers can collect some value, they can then sell you this prepaid balance or reload this prepaid card so you can now spend for merchants. But the great thing about it is that once the prepaid card is issued, so the name of the issuer could be yourself. So let's say you're doing your own bridging and creating your own design. You can be your own supplier as long as you follow a protocol to bridge the tokens. But if you were an exchange or you're a fiat fintech provider, you will obviously put your own logo here. Once the customer has this wallet and has the fund loaded in either themselves or through an issuer, a supplier, they can now suspend it like any Ethereum transaction using a mobile wallet, and then the merchant will get it. The merchants do not need to fill out a merchant profile, so any customer can become a merchant. And that's one of the great things about the symmetry of the fact that you guys have the same type of wallet. The customer has a smart contract wallet, the merchant has a smart contract wallet, is exactly the same. And the reward program administrator has an opportunity to come to the network and say, I want to reward or provide incentive for this type of transaction on this payment network. And they can then get new customers to discover their vouchers or their tokens or their products. Now, obviously, with these suppliers, issuers, customers, and merchant, we want to make sure that through crypto economic principle, surrounding the card token being the primary unit of accounting for this incentive structure, but it can also be other tokens that gets added on top of this spend mining or liquidity mining type of mechanism. The supply reward is straightforward. A percentage of the locked value, the total value locked in layer one, are paid out in terms of both card token as well as the stable coin or whatever token that is being spent. A percentage is staked away and then distributed based on some share of the pool, very similar to Uniswap trading fees. Customer rewards are basically a type of initial mining for customers. So if you're one of the first 1,000 or 10,000 customers, you will get larger percentage of your spend in card token, and that will taper off until it basically becomes a continuous noise function until it disappears. Merchant rewards the same thing. We want to give merchant the ability to earn card token if they come and bring their artwork NFT or their subscription service on this network and accept card pay network as the payment mechanism. So stakers, anybody who wants to participate in governance, if you actively vote and actively participate in governance, you will also get additional rewards. And the same thing here for the reward administrator. It's the biggest problem we have with opening this network for competitors or other types of networks to airdrop basically rewards is that you may get spam. So there's going to be a token curator registry, which will curate the set of tokens and programs that are proven to be useful and worth redeeming into your wallet. And to participate in that network, you need to do a TCR, or token curator registry, and there will be the fees to maintain that TCR is managed and paid for by the card token. So as I mentioned earlier, the governance of the system, there's really three really important dial. One is, what are the stable coins that we accept on the network? One of the things that is really annoying is that it's if you say, I only support DAI, but I do not support USDC, it's very confusing to have to swap USDC for DAI. The truth is, for a payment mechanism, any adequately liquid and well-pegged, historically well-pegged, should be supported all the same. So what we want to do is create an allow list of stablecoin that all merchants who participate in the card network need to accept. And that's a token carrier registry that manages the list of allowed stablecoin. So let's say a new coin come into the market and people want to, hey, say I want to pay in CardPay with that new stablecoin. They just have to go through basically a process to have the community agree to add that on the list, and then every merchant would be able to accept that. Now, the prepaid card balance will be different. Each prepaid card is backed by one particular type of stablecoin, but the merchants will have to accept them if they believe and buy into the network. So you don't have to worry about this merchant only accept USDC, but don't accept, let's say, DAI. That would be weird. Same thing with list of default reward token we mentioned. These are the tokens that can be redeemed from a customer when they earn the rewards. Anything that is not on this default list will be, it could be issued or could be available to be redeemed, but most people won't redeem them because it's not on this allowed list. So it provides some incentive and also provides an economic incentive to participate in a governance process, especially if a merchant or a network want to make their goods, and it could be tokens or non-fungible available. The final part, and this is probably the most important economic principle of how the CardPay network can become long-term sustainable beyond this initial kind of airdrop or spend mining, is to make sure that a percentage of the revenue, so like something like 0.5% would be a good start, is actually deducted from payments by merchants. So merchants do not get 100% of what the customer paid them, adjusted for exchange rate, but is that they get about, 0.5% less. And that's way better than fiat payment, right? Fiat payment sometimes is as high as 4 to 5%. That percentage would be given to suppliers who have stake token to provide bandwidth, issuers. Let's say I got you to buy a prepaid card because I have a convenient way for you to pay me on another network, right? Then that person who issued a card has their logo on the card should get a little tiny basis point of those transactions. And then obviously a percentage which are all CardStack token holders. So if you are helping to govern and manage this network and is an active participant, you will get a percentage of that as an accrual value of being able to help this network and curate this network so it's a functional ecosystem with the right behaviors along the time. So one way to return value to cardholders is to reduce the circulation supply. So these fees, which are paid in various type of tokens, so it could be DAI, it could be USDC, the layer 2 version of them. The easiest way to do it is to use a Uniswap-like vehicle. Since we're on XDAI chain, we are integrating with Honeyswap. And then we will just, the network or the protocol will just buy card token from the network, from Honeyswap, and then it will get card token back, right? From taking the fees that are paid in the stablecoin and then buying card token and then burning the card token to return the value to the card holders. So these percentage fees, how high they are and how low they are adjustable. As similar to demonstrated by a successful project like MakerDAO, these fees and these percentages are really important, right? The community really have the debate and thinking through. If you set the rate too high, then merchants doesn't want to get involved. You say too low, then suppliers don't do the work to bring this capability or bring this economic bandwidth to the protocol. So this is something that we're building a parallel governance system using Snapshot, which is one of the popular ways to do off-chain and cheap transactions for voting governance, and we're using that and have a team working on that to bring that infrastructure so we can help govern list of default tokens, list allowable stablecoin, and determination of the percentage of the fees that goes to whom and to where. The growth of the CardStack token, and we will go more in detail in the future, as we already talked about, it's a staking token, it's a reward. It's necessary for you to achieve a certain level of reward, so you have a certain level of balance. In CardStack, you have to earn a certain number of card token before you can get a certain status. Status could be related to discount, or it could be related to just a badge of honor. We use card to get in and out of other type of tokens that are on this network. So if we cannot find a pair to convert a membership token or community token, if they have a card pair, then card becomes the routing. So it will be a community token to card, card to DAI, and then that's how you can redeem goods and services with that. So we want card token in our CardPay layer 2 to be the main liquidity pair for most of the tokens and reward points and stable coins. So I think that would be a healthy way to use this common card token as a bridge pair to make this happen. It doesn't make sense for us to use ETH because since we're using the XDAI network, ETH is not really involved. We don't use ETH for gas. We use XDAI as the gas, which is also pegged to stablecoin USD pricing. So it would make sense for us to use card for that purpose. And finally, the burning of cards is really important to us because by burning cards, we can have the opportunity to mint new cards to reward future capability. That's currently not in our plans about how we want to do it, but by managing the economic bandwidth and ensuring that card supply has this mint and burn cycle, and that's the best type of crypto economics because it allows you to get people who have the means to pay something, to get themselves included, to promote, to boost, to buy ads, and then using that to balance out, hey, who we need to reward to incentivize so this network grow organically. So the technology we use in the CardPay network are basically technology we have found, the tools we have found that is reliable and well proven so that we can build this fairly sophisticated protocol without taking a lot of risk. We're not building a new blockchain. We're building on top of XDAI chain, which is itself a Ethereum EVM compatible chain. And one of the greatest technology from XDAI is they have this arbitrary message bus, which is a way to allow you to programmably shift what type of messages are exchanged between layer 1 and layer 2. So you can use that programmability, that arbitrariness to bridge not only simple ERC20 token, but also complex bundles like ERC1155 bundles or even NFT art. So we control, using the AMB as the protocol, the ability to signal through the arbitrary message bus to make this all happen. So we thank the XDAI team for providing this technology and allowing us to integrate it to bring this end-to-end experience to the customers. Gnosis Safe, as we mentioned, not only do we use it as a way to store value and create logic, we also use the Gnosis Relay service, which allows Gnosis Safe to do gasless transactions. So when you're paying a merchant 10 DAI worth of services, on XDAI chain, if we were to do it without Gnosis Safe and without relay services, you have to have some XDAI, which is the gas token, maybe less than a cent worth, but you still have to have two types of token in your wallet. The gas token to pay the gas fee, and then the ERC20 compatible token to pay the merchant. But with Gnosis Relay service in our integration in our smart contract wallet, we can actually have a relayer pay the XDAI fee and then redeem from the revenue pool, same pool that we deduct the 0.5% fee to benefit the participant network. The relayer are part of that network operator, so they would get back maybe a margin, some percentage over what they fronted in XDAI fee, so that the users don't have to worry about maintaining two types of token. Their tokens in the smart contract wallet is just the stablecoin or the reward token. They don't need to worry about XDAI because of meta transactions. And it's really fantastic that this is all working right now. HoneySwap, we're using that as a way to bridge the different liquidity of the token, and that does not require us to bring the token back to layer 1 to swap, so you can swap in layer 2. Wallet Connect and Rainbow, these are really at the forefront of the innovation about what is possible with mobile wallet that uses Ethereum as the basis, and we're leveraging not only the protocol but also the code base of Rainbow Wallet in an open source way, sharing our changes back to the community and providing this new extension where it's a payment-oriented, reward-oriented workflow in addition to a more investment and collectible workflow that Rainbow's done. and Wire and other type of provider would love to work with them to create screens within the mobile app so that different issuers can have different onboarding based on geography requirements. Some issuers are more comfortable with certain type of economic activity or less comfortable with other ones. But it's important that the user has a choice. And once you get a prepaid card from an issuer, you know that the subset activity you can do with that prepaid card is compliant with whatever rules that the fiat on-ramp provider has set. We do not believe in choosing one because there's so many different types of opportunity to pay merchants. The same way in your wallet, you probably have some a gift card that can only be redeemed from a restaurant, and some Visa card that accepted in most places, maybe a slightly less popular card that is only available in certain places. So we want to allow various type of fiat on-ramp to create a rich network. So these ideas are important for CardStack because when we create this card pay capability, what we can now do is to allow for creative businesses to create kind of like Shopify store that accepts card pay. So we are working on a service called CardSpace, which is a flexible dApp creation and hosting tool so that you can go ahead and create your storefront in a web builder, drag and drop, and you can upload your own images, while knowing that when you add a buy button on it, all the workflow for wallet and funding and getting your Apple Pay funding and balance, all that stuff is already taken care of by card pay. So I don't believe the CardSpace is the only product that can be built on top of card pay. We just feel like it makes sense for the storefront to be one organization or one unit of interface, and then the card pay is more like your merchant dashboard. The ability for us to extend what CardSpace can contain. Right now, CardSpace is mostly focused on some products and some about me and some merchant information, maybe some content. But you can certainly extend that to new types of UI. So CardStack has always been focused on building a JavaScript framework so that the type of UI you can put to the user in your CardSpace or in whatever application your card is embedded within can be assets, could be offers, could be new payment types or new rules type or even legal agreements. So we are actually adding this capability for developers who build these new card type to get a share of the revenue pool. So if you actually sold something, let's say generative art, you're the Beeple of the next generation and you create this NFT, but you're using someone else's card to make your art, maybe you owe them 5% of your sale price because their software enable you to go and make that new thing. And that's also true for game assets. So this ties CardPay to a lot of the people who have been in our community for a long time. You see that we've been working very hard on the extensibility of the framework, the JavaScript side. This is how it kind of dovetails. And finally, I think it's important to think about that, being able to mint NFT is something that people are still struggling to do because you need to get ETH. It's pretty expensive on layer 1. Since we already have a layer 2 network going with payments from customer, it will make sense for us to explore building an NFT platform that is going to be built on top of existing smart contracts, whether that's from OpenZeppelin or even from Zora. The idea here is you mint on layer 1, layer 2, so it's very cheap. You can use your existing prepaid card balance to pay for that minting, maybe 10 cents. And then your first collector, your first buyer will then go through the bridge. Same bridge we use for reward cards and prepaid card balance, by the way, and bring that to mainnet for sale at OpenSea or whatever it might be. So the idea here, as in conclusion, is that we really believe that CardPay is an important component of the CardStack ecosystem, is the economic bandwidth that allows us to innovate on multiple products and services that leverage the same payment mechanism, the same wallet distribution, and more importantly, the same economic ties that bring us together, which is a reward token of CardStack token. By using one payment network underlying all this capability, we can build a super app, like the same way WeChat is like a super app in China. Once you have WeChat Pay, you pay for your rides, for your foods, for your shopping on that one wallet. We believe we can do the same thing in crypto, using the CardStack mobile application as that super app and using the reward program that is enabled by the CardStack token as well as other token that the administrator that joins our network and create distribution rules on our card protocol and Tally protocol. So that's kind of what I want to catch you guys up on. We will distribute this paper in some sort of PDF form so that you guys can look at it. It's about 16 pages, and it can be something that for folks that want to learn more about the mechanism, you will get some keyword. You can look at our open source repository and see how you can get involved to help us both extend or be an issuer or talk to us about integration to bringing your fiat on-ramp or your crypto on-ramp to other customers. So thank you very much for your time today. I hope this walkthrough was helpful. And then if you have any questions, you can ask one of our team members on Discord and Telegram, and we'll try to compile it in fact to include it in the blog post when we post this video on Medium. Again, thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.